Hey everybody! I've made it to the outdoors. I am at my family's cabin up in the woods, the house that my grandparents built. I'm standing under the beautiful carport here. This is the house built in the 1950s. And I'm having some friends come over today, and I don't have a lot of time, as usual. Who has any time these days? But I thought that I would make our focaccia. We make focaccia every week at the kitchen. I swear to God, if I could just make a living making focaccia, that's probably what I do. I just think it's like the best, most easiest thing that comes out in the most delicious way. So in that sense, it's very Zoified. Zoified something, if you haven't joined us before, is about making things that are really, really simple and having them come out in an extraordinary way. So I'm going to teach you my focaccia recipe today. I have some waiting to put in the pan. I'm going to try and go through this kind of quickly. We've got some warm water here at 120 degrees. And I've measured out some, I have some yeast in the bowl, just regular yeast, not instant or anything. I put a little bit of sugar in because, as we know, yeast loves to feed on stuff. So we've got a little bit of sugar in there. And I like to put my water at 120 degrees. You can go a bit lower if you want. If you've never made bread before, this is a great way to sort of experiment. See some notes coming in. Sorry. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I have a scale here. This scale is about 30 bucks. You need to have one of these. Go online, order this for yourself. If you don't want to order from Amazon, find somewhere else. My aunt's stopping by. Hi, Auntie Ellen. Mom's inside. No, that's fine. Okay, so I have a scale here, and I'm just going to, I've weighed out, I don't even weigh out the sugar. I just put a pinch of sugar in the yeast. I have my water at 120 degrees. Let me just get this at 0. And I'm going to pour in 300 grams of water. I hope it fits in this bowl. It may not. I'll be very close. Okay, so 300 degrees. I'm doing this first because I'm going to swirl it around a little bit. You know, I always like to get my hands into things. So I'm swirling this around a little bit just to make sure the yeast isn't sticking on the bottom. And I'm just going to leave this aside for a few minutes for it to all come up to the surface. And it will then go into the flour mixture. Okay. So I've got 5 minutes to explain everything to you. What I have in my bowl is a mixture of some beautiful organic red fife flour and also some organic all-purpose flour. You could sort of go in whatever direction you want. For this particular recipe, I'm using 306 grams of organic all-purpose flour, and I got this beautiful red fife flour from Dear Grain. I ordered some bread from them. Awesome little company. So I love using red fife. It has a lot of flavor. So I'm going to use some red fife flour in here too. 153 grams of red fife. So once the yeast has proofed in the bowl here, I'm going to pour it in to my mixture and then knead it a little bit and let it rest. But I've also added in 12 grams of kosher salt. You can use 12 grams of any salt. Sometimes I add a couple of extra grams. I like it a tiny bit on the salty side. So as we're waiting for that to proof, I'm just going to show you what I made earlier. This is the dough that's sitting in this bowl. As you can see, it's quite, it's actually quite whole wheaty, which I wasn't sure if I would like, but it comes out amazing. So I'm just going to pull this dough out of the bowl gently. And what I want to do is, I don't want to get, it's pretty soft. I don't want to get too much flour on the board. So I'm just going to actually sprinkle just a tiny bit of flour on the board here. And I actually don't even want to knead this. This is a recipe. This is a recipe that I've taken from Roberta's in New York. If you've ever been in New York, they are an unbelievable pizza place. They do lots of amazing things in Brooklyn. And I love the way that they do their dough. They don't touch it too much. So all I want to do is kind of pull it and fold it under to make sure that it's smooth on top. You're kind of kneading it a tiny bit, but not really. You just really want a nice, smooth top. See, there you go. Very, very easy. And then what I'm going to do, we have a couple more minutes while the yeast is proofing in the bowl here. I like to use a deep pan or a baking sheet and some parchment. Always use parchment. And what I'm going to do is pour a little bit of oil in the bottom. I did not pour this out. Huge container of oil. I'd say about 2 to 3 tablespoons. So that's always going to go in the bottom. I like to have the focaccia with lots of oil, but I tend to put the oil on top. Okay, so now you can see what's happening with our yeast here. This is one of my favorite processes. It is just blooming and proofing, and that's a good result. 120 degrees, you want the water. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this really soft dough. I'm gonna put it in my pan here. And I just want like a little bit of flour on my hands, just a little bit. I don't want it to stick, and I definitely don't want to put any olive oil on the top of the bread. At this point, what we find is that it doesn't proof as well if you put the olive oil on the top. So I'm always just using the tips of my fingers, you see here, and I'm pressing it into the pan very delicately. And what I want to do is kind of press from the center out to the corners, center out to the corners. Okay, if a tiny bit of oil gets on top. And if you can't get it into all the corners, don't worry, because as this dough relaxes and before you put it in the oven, you'll be able to kind of pull the corners a little bit to the side, so you'll be fine. Okay, now this might not look like anything at this point, but it's gonna be amazing. I have the focaccia now in the pan, mostly pressed out to the corners. I have a towel that I've really dampened with water, and I'm gonna cover it. You could alternatively cover this with some plastic wrap, but in the world today, trying to use less plastic. You wanna put this in a warm place. It's actually kind of breezy outside, so I'm gonna bring it inside, warm place, and I'm gonna leave it alone for 2 to 3 hours, depending on how warm the day is. So I'm gonna move on and show you how to do the dough here. So I have my red Fife whole wheat flour, salt is in here. Don't forget the salt. Bread without salt is terrible. Don't forget the salt. And now I'm gonna pour in my proofed yeast. Get that right into the bowl. I like to get every little last bit of yeast out. And I'm gonna pour in like a glug of olive oil, let's say maybe 2 tablespoons. All right, that's just gonna help the dough be a little more luxurious and soft. I'm gonna start by mixing this with my spoon. It's gonna be a little bit on the wet side. It's totally fine. You just have to be a little more delicate with it. And then this is not actually something we're gonna need. I know that a lot of pizza doughs and bread doughs are needed, but I find that you really don't need it with this. You just have to really let it rest a little bit and then form it, and you're good to go. So now that it's sort of, you know, all hydrated, I'm just gonna kind of gather it together a little bit, push down on it, but I'm not trying to knead it like I would maybe other doughs to get the gluten to develop. I'm just sort of trying to get, there's some flour left in the bottom of the bowl here, and the dough is pretty sticky. So my goal is to get it to be not sticky and hold together and use all the flour and take any bits off my fingers here and get those in. And you're gonna end up with a pretty rough dough. I don't want any bits of dry flour. So I want it all to be homogeneous. It's still pretty sticky. So it depends on the day. I'm just gonna put maybe, you know, 1 tablespoon of flour just so that it's not super sticky. I would say if you have never made bread before, you are just gonna wanna practice at this, get a feel for it. This is not, just threw some dough, just flew over on the door over there. So get some practice on this. You know, this is something, this doesn't cost a lot of money. It's okay to make a mistake. I wouldn't worry too much about it. So now it's less sticky and it's a pretty rough ball. At this point, I'm gonna leave it in the bowl. I'm gonna cover it with a wet towel. Make sure the towel is wet. You don't want this to dry out at all. You could cover it with a pan if you want, or some plastic wrap. And I'm gonna leave this for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, you're gonna do the process where it goes into the pan. And I baked one yesterday, so I've posted that on my Instagram feed. It's also in stories. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you will get the entire recipe and be able to see the photos of it completed. So now I'm waiting 2 hours, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour about a cup of olive oil all over the top when it's ready to go in, and I'm gonna take my fingers and gently make those very signature little dimples that are in the focaccia. I don't wanna do too much. I don't wanna let so much of the gas escape. Just do it pretty gently, push to the bottom. The olive oil will fill into all of the pockets. At that point, if you wanna load it up with vegetables or meat or cheese, that's a perfect time to do it. I like to preheat my oven pretty much as hot as it's gonna go. So usually that's about 5 or 550. Get it super hot. I like to put it right on the bottom shelf in the oven. You want a lot of heat to get to it so it rises up really quickly. If you find that on the bottom, maybe it's getting too brown, but it's not done yet, I'll move it to the top shelf. I could turn the heat down to somewhere between 4 and 450. Let it finish cooking, and there you have it. What you're looking for is a really fluffy bread with a crispy bottom and a brown top. It is one of my absolute favorite things to do. It's a super Zoified recipe because, as you can see, it's super simple. You definitely want to have a thermometer to test your water temperature to get it to 120, and you need one of these scales, about 30 bucks. Get one online. And I'm very excited to see all your focaccia recipes. So simple. You will make this for the rest of the summer, all winter long. Somebody's coming over. Do it in the morning, let it proof, bake it. You can always reheat it later if you want. If you don't feel like making your own focaccia and you live in Montreal, you can order from the Zoe Ford Deli. You can go to zoeford.com. Every week we change the flavor of our focaccia. This week, we always make it seasonal, so this week we're using fresh Quebec corn and some potatoes and lots of garlic scape oil on top. So it's gonna be super duper delicious. I can't wait to share it with you guys. And I didn't do a video last week, but I do try and do one every week and try and teach you something about zoifying. Trying to take a few days off here and there, but I would love to hear from you if you have some things you'd like to learn to zoify. Throw a really complicated recipe at me and I will do a video about it and zoify it for you and teach you how to include the art of zoifying into your life. And if you don't live in Montreal and you want a piece of Zoe Ford, you can always order online from the pantry. We ship across Canada, and in the fall we're going to add about 12 new items to the pantry. I'm super excited. I've been recipe testing, so I've got some pantry calories going on. So thanks guys. I'd love to see your focaccia videos, so please tag me at Zoe Ford Montreal. And happy baking, and enjoy the weather before the winter comes. Bye.